The great chamber stretched for miles in every direction. Floating platforms held delegates from 4,000 different species, each one stranger than the last. Some were made of light. Others were clouds of gas held together by magnetic fields. A few looked like nothing more than shadows given form. This was the Galactic Council, the oldest governing body in the known universe. And today, they would decide humanity's fate. Ambassador Alara Vance stood at the center of it all. She was a tall woman with gray hair and steady hands. Behind her stood 12 other humans, the best Earth had to offer. Scientists, artists, leaders. They had traveled for 3 years to reach this place, carrying humanity's hopes with them like precious cargo. Alara had practiced her speech 1,000 times. She spoke of Earth's history, its struggles, its triumphs. She talked about human art and music, about the way her people had learned to heal diseases and build cities and dream of the stars. She offered friendship. She offered trade. She offered everything humanity had. The council listened in complete silence. When she finished, Alara waited. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Then High Chancellor Vorith rose from his platform. Vorith was ancient beyond measure. His body was made of living crystal, and light bent strangely around him. His species had founded the council over 1,000,000 years ago, and he had led it for the last 100,000. When he spoke, his voice rang through the chamber like breaking glass. Species 7291, designated Homo sapiens, has been evaluated. The council has reached its verdict. Alara felt her heart beating fast, but she kept her face calm. Humanity is hereby banished from civilized space. You are forbidden from entering any territory claimed by council species. You are forbidden from communicating with any council member. You are forbidden from trading, sharing technology, or making contact of any kind. This decision is final. The words hit Alara like a physical blow. Around her, the other delegates gasped. One of them, a young scientist named David, stumbled backward as if he had been struck. "I don't understand," Alara said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "What have we done wrong? We came here in peace. We offer only friendship." Vorith's crystal form pulsed with cold light. "You have done nothing wrong, Ambassador. That is not the issue. The issue is what you will do, what you must inevitably do, given your nature. Our nature. Your species is dangerously unstable. Your history shows constant warfare. You fight among yourselves with terrifying regularity. You have developed weapons capable of destroying your own world, and you have come close to using them. This alone would be concerning." Vorith paused, and the chamber seemed to grow colder. "But there's a greater problem. Your rate of advancement is beyond anything we have ever recorded. 10,000 years ago, your ancestors lived in caves and hunted with stone tools. Today, you travel between stars. You have achieved in millennia what takes other species millions of years. Our projections show that within 3 centuries you will surpass every species in this chamber."
Oh.
Alara shook her head. "Isn't that a good thing? We could help you. We could share what we learn." "No, Ambassador. It is a threat. Species that advance too quickly become unstable. They develop weapons they cannot control. They make decisions they cannot take back. They destroy themselves, or worse, they destroy others. We have seen it before. We will not see it again." Another voice spoke up. It belonged to Counselor Thexera, a being that looked like a massive insect with too many eyes. "The decision is not made in anger, human. We do not hate you. We simply cannot risk you. The galaxy must be protected." "Protected from what?" Alara demanded. "From progress. From change. We haven't hurt anyone. We haven't threatened anyone. You're punishing us for crimes we haven't committed." "We are preventing crimes that will certainly occur," Vorith replied. "This is not punishment. It is precaution. You have 30 cycles to remove all human presence from explored space. Your home system will be quarantined. Any species that contacts you will face expulsion from the council." Alara looked around the chamber. Thousands of eyes watched her, some with pity, some with fear, none with sympathy. "You're making a mistake," she said quietly. A terrible mistake, perhaps Voreth acknowledged, but it is ours to make. This session is concluded. Guards escort the human delegation from the chamber. As armed beings moved toward them, Elira's team drew closer together. David looked ready to cry. Others looked ready to fight. Elara raised her hand to calm them. "We'll go peacefully," she said. "There's no point in resistance." "Not here." "Not now." The guards surrounded them and began leading them toward the exit. The chamber was silent except for the sound of their footsteps. Just before they reached the door, Elara stopped. She turned back to face the assembled council one last time. Her voice was soft, but somehow it carried through the entire chamber. "You'll remember this day? All of you. Someday you'll look back at this moment and wonder what might have been different. And when that day comes, I want you to remember one thing." She paused, meeting Voreth's glowing eyes. "We asked for nothing but friendship. We offered nothing but peace. And you turned us away because you were afraid of what we might become. But here's the truth about humans, Chancellor. We don't become less when we're pushed down. We become more. Every challenge makes us stronger. Every obstacle makes us smarter. Every enemy makes us more determined." The guards pulled at her arm, but she held her ground for one more moment. "You're not protecting the galaxy from us. You're creating the very thing you fear. And by the time you realize that, it will be far too late." Then she turned and walked through the door, her head held high, her team following behind her. The journey back to Earth took 3 years. When the delegation finally arrived home, they found a world already changed. News of the banishment had traveled ahead of them. People were angry. People were afraid. People were lost. Elara addressed the United Earth Assembly the day after her return. She told them everything. The accusations, the verdict, the deadline, and then she told them what she believed. "They think they've ended us," she said. "They think they've removed us from history. But they don't understand who we are. They don't understand that humanity doesn't die in the dark. We find ways to survive. We find ways to grow. We find ways to become something greater than we were before." She looked out at the assembly, at the faces of leaders and citizens watching from every nation on Earth. "They gave us 30 cycles to leave, so we'll leave. We'll go into the empty spaces they fear. We'll build where they said nothing could be built. And someday, when we're ready, we'll return. Not for revenge, not for conquest, but to show them exactly how wrong they were." The assembly voted that night. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would go into exile, and humanity would survive. 80 years had passed since the banishment, and humanity was dying. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the Exodus Prime, the largest ship in what remained of the human fleet. Through the viewport, he could see the other vessels. 200 ships carrying 12 million people. Once they had been proud colony ships built to carry humanity to new worlds. Now they were floating coffins, held together by desperate repairs and fading hope. The dead zones stretched endlessly around them. This was the region beyond the outer rim, the space the Galactic Council had deemed worthless. No habitable planets. No useful resources. Nothing but empty void and strange energy readings that made navigation nearly impossible. This was where humanity had been sent to die. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the report on his screen. Food supplies were critical. 3 ships had lost life support in the past month. Birth rates were falling because people had stopped believing in a future worth bringing children into. His first officer, Commander Sarah Okafor, approached with another tablet. "Captain, we've lost contact with the Wanderer. That's the 5th ship this year." Marcus nodded slowly. The Wanderer had probably suffered an engine failure. Out here, without spare parts or safe harbors, even small problems became death sentences. "Any luck with the surveys?" he asked. Sarah shook her head. "Nothing habitable within range. There's a rogue planet about 2 months away, but it's frozen solid. No atmosphere. No water. Just ice and rock. Better than nothing," Marcus said. "Set a course." The fleet changed direction, all 200 ships turning toward a dead world orbiting no star. It was a desperate move, but desperation had become normal. Marcus had stopped counting how many desperate moves they had made in the science bay.
Dr. Yuki Tanaka was having a very different kind of day. YUK was 63 years old.
She had been a young researcher when the fleet left Earth, eager to study alien worlds. Now she studied the strange phenomena of the dead zones, the energy readings that drove most sensors crazy today. Her sensors were going very crazy indeed. This doesn't make sense, she muttered. Running the calculations for the 5th time, this shouldn't be possible. Her assistant, a young man named James, looked over her shoulder. What is it? These energy patterns. The council classified them as anomalies, basically random noise. But they're not random at all. They're structured. They follow rules. Different rules than normal physics, but rules nonetheless. James frowned. What kind of rules? Yuki pulled up a holographic display. It showed swirling patterns of energy like rivers flowing through space itself. The dead zones aren't empty. They're full of something the Council never bothered to understand. Exotic matter. Dimensional rifts. Energy sources we've never seen before. Why didn't the Council use any of this? Yuki laughed bitterly. Because it didn't fit their models. Their science is 1,000,000 years old. They stopped innovating eons ago. When they found something that didn't match their theories, they ignored it. She turned to face James, and her eyes were brighter than they had been in years. But we don't have that luxury. We can't afford to ignore anything, and I think I've found something that could save us all. 3 weeks later, Yuki stood before the fleet's leadership council. Captain Chen was there, along with the commanders of every major ship. General Amara Okonkwo, the former head of Earth's defense forces, watched with skeptical eyes. You're telling us you can make energy from nothing? General Okonkwo asked. Not from nothing, Yuki corrected. From the dimensional rifts? They're everywhere in this region. The Council thought they were dangerous, unpredictable, and they were right. But that's because they were trying to avoid them. I'm suggesting we learn to use them. She activated her presentation. It showed diagrams of a new type of engine, unlike anything humanity had built before. I call it the Rift Drive. Instead of pushing against normal space, it folds space using the exotic matter found near dimensional rifts. If I'm right, it would be faster than anything the Council has. And it would only work out here in the dead zones. Anywhere else there aren't enough rifts to power it. Captain Chen leaned forward. How long to build a prototype? 6 months, if I have full access to resources, and General Okonkwo stood up. 6 months? We might not last 6 months. This is a fantasy, maybe Yuki agreed. But it's the only fantasy that might keep us alive. Do you have a better one? The room fell silent. Nobody did. Then let me try, Yuki said. What do we have to lose? 6 months later, the prototype worked. It wasn't pretty. It was held together with spare parts and prayers. But when Yuki activated the Rift Drive, the test ship vanished from one point in space and appeared at another, instantaneously. A journey that would have taken weeks happened in seconds. The news spread through the fleet like wildfire. For the first time in decades, people smiled. Children laughed. The future suddenly seemed possible again. Within a year, every ship in the fleet had been retrofitted with rift drives. They could travel faster and farther than ever before. The dead zones, once their prison, became their highway. They found the rogue planet and built their first settlement inside a hollowed asteroid. It was cold and cramped and ugly, but it was home. They called it Haven. Haven grew. More asteroids were converted into living spaces. Mining operations extracted resources from frozen worlds. Factories produced new ships, new tools, new hope. General Okonkwo watched it all happen with growing wonder. She had spent her career preparing for war, planning defenses against threats that never came. Now she found herself building something completely different. We need a government, she told the council, 5 years after Haven was founded. Not a fleet command. A real government. Laws, structure, a vision for what we want to become. Captain Chen nodded. What do you suggest? Okonkwo had thought about this for a long time. The council cast us out because they feared what we might become. They thought we would destroy ourselves or threaten them. I say we prove them wrong. I say we build something better than anything they've ever seen. An empire. Someone asked, an ascendancy, Okonkwo said. Not built on conquest or fear. Built on the same things that got us this far. Adaptability, innovation, the stubborn refusal to die when someone tells us we should. The vote was unanimous on the 100th anniversary of humanity's banishment. A ceremony was held on Haven. 2 million people watched as General Okonkwo. Now President Okonkwo announced the founding of the Terran Ascendancy 100 years ago. We were told we had no place among the stars, she declared. Today, we claim our own place. Not the scraps they left us, but something we built with our own hands. Something that belongs to us, the crowd cheered. Ships fired their engines in celebration. Children born in exile watched their parents cry with joy. We are no longer refugees, Okonkwo continued. We are no longer victims. We are the Terran Ascendancy. And this is only the beginning. Far away in the comfortable halls of the Galactic Council, no one noticed. Humanity was forgotten, written off as a failed experiment. A cautionary tale for species that grew too fast. They had no idea what was coming. 200 years had passed since humanity vanished into the dead zones. The galactic council continued as it always had. Slow and steady, unchanging. Species rose and fell within its ranks. Wars were fought and forgotten. But the great machine of galactic civilization ground on, certain of its own permanence. Counselor Thixara of the Velkith Dominion was old now, even by her species' standards. She had been young when the humans were banished, had even spoken at their hearing. Sometimes, late at night, she still thought about the human ambassador's final words. You'll remember this day, recently. Thixara had begun to remember more often. It started with rumors from the Outer Rim. Merchant. Ships reported strange sightings. Sensor ghosts that appeared and disappeared. Ships that moved faster than Council physics said was possible. Energy readings that matched nothing in any database. Most Council members dismissed the reports. The Outer Rim was full of strange things. Space debris. Rogue planets. Natural phenomena that frightened superstitious traders. But Thixara paid attention. She was a scientist before she became a politician, and the reports followed a pattern. They all came from the same region of space, the region bordering the dead zones, the region where humanity had been sent to die. She requested a meeting with High Chancellor Vorith. The ancient crystal being received her in his private chambers, his body casting rainbow shadows across the walls. You believe the humans survived, Vorith said. It was not a question. I believe something survived, Thixara replied. The reports are too consistent to ignore. Ships appearing from nowhere. Technology we don't recognize. Someone is out there. Possible. The dead zones contain nothing. We surveyed them thoroughly. We surveyed them 1 million years ago. And we declared them worthless because they didn't contain anything useful to us. Perhaps we were wrong. Vorith was silent for a long moment. What do you propose? A reconnaissance mission. 12 warships. Enough firepower to handle any threat, but small enough to avoid attention. Let me find out what's really happening. Vorith considered this. Very well. But Counselor, I want to be clear. If the humans have somehow survived, they are still under sentence of banishment. Any contact will be treated as a violation of galactic law. Understood, Thixara said. But as she left the chamber, she felt something she hadn't felt in centuries. Fear. The reconnaissance fleet launched 3 months later. 12 of the Council's finest warships, crewed by experienced soldiers, equipped with the best weapons available. Thixara watched them go from the observation deck of the nearest space station. She never saw them again. For 6 months. The fleet sent regular updates, reporting empty space and strange energy readings. Then, one day the updates stopped. No distress signal. No explanation. Just silence. Thexera sent requests for information. She asked for search parties. She demanded answers. The council told her to wait. Resources were limited. The fleet had probably encountered a natural disaster. These things happened. Then the message arrived. It came on a frequency the council didn't use, coded in a language that took days to translate. When Thexera finally read it, her multiple hearts nearly stopped.
Outward, Thexera.
Your fleet is safe. Your crews are being treated well. We have much to discuss. Coordinates are attached. Come alone. You have nothing to fear from us. The Terran Ascendancy looks forward to your visit. The Terran Ascendancy. The name meant nothing to council records, but Thexera knew exactly what it meant. The humans hadn't just survived. They had built something, against every protocol, every law, every instinct for self-preservation. Thexera decided to go. She told no one. She took her personal yacht, a small, fast ship built for diplomatic missions, and entered the coordinates. The journey took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of jumping through space that should have been empty, that the council had declared uninhabitable. 2 weeks of watching her sensors go crazy with readings that defied explanation. When she finally arrived at the coordinates, Thexera understood why the reconnaissance fleet had stopped reporting. There were no words in her language. For what she saw, the dead zones had been transformed. Where there should have been void, there were structures. Massive stations the size of small moons. Orbital rings around artificial planets. Shipyards producing vessels that dwarfed council dreadnoughts. And everywhere, ships. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. Moving in perfect formation, guided by technologies she couldn't begin to understand. A voice crackled through her communications system. Counselor Thexera, welcome to Terran space. Please follow the guide lights to Station Prometheus. Director Reyes is expecting you. Thexera followed the lights in a daze. Her yacht passed through defensive perimeters that made council fortifications look like children's toys. She saw weapons platforms capable of destroying entire fleets. She saw energy shields that glowed with impossible colors. And she saw humans. Millions of them. Working alongside aliens she didn't recognize. Species that had never joined the council. Species she had thought were extinct. Species she had never seen before. All of them moving with purpose. Building, creating, living. Station Prometheus was the size of a small planet. The Xaris yacht landed in a hangar bay that could have held 100 council cruisers. She stepped out onto the platform and found a human waiting for her. The human was a woman in her middle years, with dark skin and silver hair. She wore a simple uniform with no medals or decorations, but she carried herself with absolute authority. Counselor Thexera, the woman said. I'm Director Helena Reyes of the Terran Ascendancy. Thank you for coming, Thexera. His multiple legs trembled slightly. My fleet. Where are they? Safe, as I promised. They're being educated about what we've built here. Most of them have already requested asylum.
Helena smiled.
We found that council citizens are often happier once they see there's another way to live. What have you done here? This is impossible. The council surveyed this region. There was nothing. Helena began walking, gesturing for Thexera to follow. Your council surveyed the dead zones and found nothing useful to your existing technology. You found energy patterns that didn't match your physics, dimensional rifts that your ships couldn't navigate, exotic matter that your science couldn't explain. So you declared it all worthless and forgot about it. They passed through corridors filled with activity. Humans and aliens worked side by side, speaking languages that Xara didn't recognize. Children played in parks filled with plants from 100 worlds. We didn't have that luxury, Helena continued. We were sent here to die. So we had to learn. We had to adapt. We had to understand things your council never bothered to study. And in doing so, we discovered that the dead zones aren't empty at all. They're full of possibilities. You just have to be willing to see them. They reached an observation deck. Below them, a fleet was being assembled. Ships larger than anything that Xara had ever seen, powered by engines that burned with strange fire. "How many ships do you have?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Right now." "About 50,000 combat vessels. But that's not really the point. The point is what we've become. The Terran ascendancy isn't just humans anymore. We've welcomed every species the Council abandoned or ignored. We've built a civilization based on growth, on change, on the idea that the universe belongs to everyone willing to explore it." Lena turned to face Thexura directly. "We're not interested in revenge, Counselor. We remember what was done to us, but we've moved past anger. What we want is much simpler. What do you want?" "We want to come home. Not as refugees begging for acceptance. Not as conquerors demanding submission. As equals, as partners. As proof that the Council was wrong about us." This mind raced. "The Council will never accept that. They'll see you as a threat. They'll fight." Helena nodded slowly. "We know. That's why I invited you here. To give you a choice. You can return to the Council and tell them what you've seen. You can warn them. You can help them prepare for war. Or you can help us show them that war isn't necessary. That there's a better path. That the galaxy is big enough for everyone." Xara looked out at the fleet below, at the stations stretching into the distance, at the impossible civilization humanity had built in the dark. "Why me?" she asked. "Why tell me any of this?" Helena smiled sadly. "Because you were their counselor. You were there when we were banished. You spoke against us, and now you have a chance to speak for us. The question is whether you're brave enough to try." Thexura thought about her long life, her comfortable position, her safe place in a galaxy that never changed. Then she thought about the human. Ambassador's final words. "You'll remember this day. What would you have me do?" she asked. Helena's smile widened. "Let me show you." When Counselor Dexura returned to Council space, she brought warnings that shook the foundations of galactic civilization. The humans were alive. They had built an empire. They were coming back at first. No one believed her. Then she showed them the recordings. The stations. The ships. The impossible technology. Suddenly, every species in the Council was very interested in what the Gexura had to say. High Chancellor Voreth called an emergency session, the first in 50,000 years. Representatives from every member species crowded into the great chamber. Fear hung in the air like smoke. "This is exactly what we predicted," Voreth declared, his crystal body pulsing with agitation. "The humans have become a threat. Our ancestors were right to banish them. Now we must finish what they started." The chamber erupted in argument. Some species wanted to negotiate. Others wanted to attack immediately. A few suggested simply ignoring the problem and hoping it went away. Thexara tried to speak. She tried to explain what she had seen, that the humans didn't want war, that they were offering partnership. But her voice was drowned out by panic. In the end, the Council voted for war. It took 3 years to assemble the largest military force in galactic history. 12 billion warships from 3,000 species. Weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. Crews numbering in the trillions. The fleet gathered at the threshold. The border between Council space and the dead zones. High Chancellor Voreth commanded the Armada personally. This would be his legacy, he declared. This would be the moment the Council proved its absolute supremacy over any who dared challenge it. The Terran Ascendancy sent a single ship. It was a small vessel, barely larger than a shuttle. It carried no visible weapons. It flew slowly toward the massive Council fleet, broadcasting a simple message. We request a meeting before hostilities begin. Our ambassador wishes to speak with High Chancellor Voreth. We come in peace. Voreth almost ordered the ship destroyed, but curiosity stayed his hand. What could the humans possibly say? What argument could they make against 12 billion warships? He agreed to the meeting. They met on an abandoned trading station at the edge of the threshold. Vorth arrived with 100 guards, the finest warriors in the galaxy. The human arrived alone. Ambassador James Okonkwo was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He carried no weapons and wore no armor. He walked into the chamber as if he were strolling through a garden. "Hi, Chancellor," he said, bowing slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me." Vorth towered over the human, his crystal form designed to intimidate lesser species. "I agreed because I am curious what foolishness you will offer. Your situation is hopeless. Surrender now, and we will be merciful." James smiled. It was not the smile of a desperate man. "May I show you something?" He pulled a small device from his pocket and activated it. A holographic display appeared. Between them is the dead zones Azure. Council mapped them 300 years ago. Empty, worthless. Dumping ground for unwanted species. The image shifted. "This is the dead zones today," Voreth's guards gasped. The hologram showed a civilization spanning hundreds of star systems. Cities built in dimensions the Council didn't know existed. Populations numbering in the tens of billions, and not just humans. Dozens of species, hundreds working together in ways the Council had never imagined. "We didn't just survive," James said quietly. "We built something new, something better. And we did it by welcoming everyone the Council rejected. Every species you abandoned, every people you forgot. They're our citizens now. They're our family." Voreth tried to maintain his composure. "Impressive. But it changes nothing. You cannot defeat us. Our numbers are overwhelming." "You're right," James agreed. "If this were a fair fight, you would probably win. But it's not a fair fight. It never was." He touched the device again. New images appeared. Images of Council warships frozen in space. Images of crew members watching their weapons fail. Images of navigation systems going dark. "Your fleet's systems were compromised the moment you entered the threshold," James explained. "We've been monitoring Council technology for 2 centuries, learning its weaknesses, preparing for this exact moment. Right now, 12 billion ships are floating helplessly in space. Not destroyed, not damaged, just waiting." Voreth lunged forward, but his guards couldn't move. Their weapons were dead. Their armor was locked in place. "How?" the Chancellor demanded. "Because while your Council was debating and posturing, we were working. We were innovating. We were doing what humans have always done. We were becoming more." James stepped closer to Voreth. "But that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to gloat. I'm here to offer you something." "What could you possibly offer me?" "A choice." James deactivated the hologram. "Right now, your crews are receiving messages. Not threats. Not demands. Just information. Who we are. What we've built. What we're offering. Some of them are already responding. Some of them are asking for asylum. Some of them are just asking questions. After a lifetime of being told there's only one way to exist in this galaxy, they're learning there's another option." Voreth's crystal form flickered with confusion and rage. "You're trying to steal our soldiers? I'm trying to free them. There's a difference." James began pacing slowly. "The Council has ruled the galaxy for 1,000,000 years. In that time, you've created stability, order, peace of a kind. But you've also created stagnation. Species that never change. Civilizations that never grow. Entire peoples who are born, live, and die without ever imagining something different." He stopped and faced Voreth directly. "We're not here to destroy the Council. We're here to replace it. Not with force, but with choice. Every being in your fleet is being offered the same thing right now. Join us or don't. Fight us or don't. But from this moment forward, know that there's another path." Voreth was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller than James had ever heard it. "Why? We banished you. We sent you to die. Why don't you hate us?" James thought about the question. He thought about his great-grandmother, Amara Okonkwo, who had died believing humanity would someday return. He thought about his grandmother, who had helped build the first stations in the dead zones. He thought about his parents, who had spent their lives preparing for this moment. "We did hate you," he admitted, "for a long time, but hate is exhausting, and we had work to do. We had a civilization to build. We had children to raise, and cities to create, and dreams to chase. Somewhere along the way, we realized that holding on to anger was just another way of letting you control us." He extended his hand toward Vorith, not in threat, but in offering. "The galaxy is changing, Chancellor. The Council's time is ending. But that doesn't mean your people have to end with it. The Ascendancy has room for everyone, even the ones who tried to destroy us. The question is whether you're brave enough to accept that." Vorith stared at the hand. For 1,000,000 years, no lesser species had dared to treat him as an equal. For 1,000,000 years, he had believed the Council was eternal. Now, he understood that nothing was eternal. Not even him. Slowly, painfully, the ancient crystal being reached out. His glowing fingers touched the human's hand. "What happens now?" he asked. James smiled. "Now we build something new. Together." Outside the station, 12 billion ships waited. Their crews were reading messages, watching videos, learning about a universe bigger than they had ever imagined. Some were afraid. Some were angry. But many, more than anyone had expected, were hopeful. The Galactic Council had ruled through fear and stagnation. The Terran Ascendancy would lead through choice and growth. The reckoning had arrived. And to everyone's surprise, it looked like hope. 50 years had passed since the confrontation at the threshold, and the galaxy was a different place. The Galactic Council had not been destroyed. It had simply become irrelevant. Species that once followed its ancient laws now governed themselves, connected through networks of trade and cooperation that made the old hierarchies pointless. Some council members had joined the Terran Ascendancy willingly. Others had simply drifted away, finding better opportunities in the new order. Even High Chancellor Vorith had changed. The ancient crystal being now taught philosophy at a university on New Terra. Writing books about the nature of change and the folly of believing anything was permanent. His students came from 100 species, and they listened to his stories of the old days with wonder and disbelief. On Earth, humanity had come home. The blue planet had been transformed during the centuries of exile. The damage done by industrial civilization had healed. Forests covered lands that had been deserts. Oceans teemed with life. The great cities remained, but they had been rebuilt in harmony with nature. Towering spires rising from gardens that stretched to the horizon. Director Yuki Chen stood on a platform overlooking the restoration of what had once been called the Sahara. Green stretched as far as she could see, broken only by rivers that had been dead for millennia. Birds flew overhead, species that had been resurrected from genetic archives preserved during the exile. Today was the 300th anniversary of humanity's banishment. Today, Yuki would address the galaxy. The audience was vast beyond counting. Trillions of beings watched from space stations and colony worlds. From ships traveling between stars and settlements at the edge of explored space, humans and aliens stood together, united by the civilization they had built. YUK, I thought about our ancestors. Captain Marcus Chen, who had led the Exodus fleet through years of despair. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who had discovered the secrets of the dead zones. General Amaro Okonkwo, who had founded the Ascendancy with nothing but hope and determination. Each of them had passed their legacy to the next generation, a chain of courage stretching across centuries. Now it was her turn. 300 years ago, she began. Her voice carried across the galaxy by technologies that would have seemed like magic to her ancestors. Humanity stood before the Galactic Council and asked for nothing more than a chance to prove ourselves. We offered friendship. We offered cooperation. We offered everything we had. She paused, letting the words settle. The Council said no. They looked at our history, our wars, our rapid advancement, and they saw only danger. They sent us into the void to die. And in their minds, we did die. We were written off, forgotten, erased from the records of galactic civilization. Behind her, a massive display showed images from the exile. The ragged fleet drifting through empty space. The first desperate settlements carved from asteroids. Children born in darkness, never knowing the warmth of a sun. They were wrong about us. Not because we were perfect. We weren't. We made mistakes. We fought among ourselves. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. But we did something the Council never expected. We learned. We grew. We became something more than we had been. The images shifted. Now they showed the transformation of the dead zones. Cities rising from nothing. Ships exploring regions the Council had declared impossible. Species that had been alone finding community with others like them. The Terran ascendancy was never about revenge, Yuki continued. It was never about proving the Council wrong. It was about proving something to ourselves, that we could be better, that we could build a civilization not based on fear and stagnation, but on hope and growth, that we could welcome the lost and forgotten and give them a home. In the crowd below, beings of every shape and size watched together. A crystal philosopher sat next to a human student. An insect diplomat held hands with a creature of living light. Children played together, unable to tell the difference between species, seeing only friends. Today we celebrate not our victory, but our vision. We celebrate the idea that the universe doesn't belong to those who arrive first, or those who have the biggest weapons. It belongs to everyone brave enough to reach for it. It belongs to dreamers and explorers, to scientists and artists, to anyone willing to build something better than what came before. The display changed one final time. It showed the Unity Flotilla, a massive fleet preparing to depart for the Andromeda Galaxy. 2 million years away at normal speeds, but the Ascendancy had learned to bend the rules of normal physics. The journey would take less than a decade. Our ancestors were told they didn't belong among the stars, Yuki said, her voice rising. So they claimed new stars. They were told they had no place in civilized space. So they built a new civilization. They were told they would die in the dark. She gestured to the sky, where the first ships of the flotilla were beginning to move, their engines painting trails of light across the blue. Instead, they became the light, the crowd roared. Not just on Earth, but across the galaxy. On space stations and colony worlds, on ships and settlements, trillions of voices raised together, celebrating not what they had survived, but what they had become. In the audience, a young Velketh girl sat on her father's shoulders, waving a flag that bore both the Ascendancy crest and the ancient sigil of her people. Her name was Thexani, named after her famous grandmother, who had first visited the Ascendancy 2 centuries ago. She didn't understand all of what Director Chen was saying, but she understood the feeling. Pride, hope, belonging, her father. A historian who had spent his life studying the exile era felt tears forming in his many eyes. He had never imagined his daughter would grow up in a galaxy like this, a galaxy where being different was celebrated instead of feared, where change was welcomed instead of punished. The flotilla's engines ignited fully. Thousands of ships, carrying millions of beings from hundreds of species, began their journey toward a new galaxy. Not as conquerors, not as refugees, as explorers, driven by the same curiosity that had pushed humanity to the stars in the first place. I watched them go, feeling the weight of history pressing against her. So many had sacrificed so much to reach this moment. So many had died believing in a future they would never see. But that future had arrived, and it was more beautiful than anyone had dared to dream. The Council told us we were dangerous, she said, her voice soft now, carried by technology that made whispers into thunder. They were right. We were dangerous. Dangerous to complacency. Dangerous to cruelty. Dangerous to the belief that the universe belongs only to those who fear change. She turned to face the crowd directly, her eyes shining. They sent us into the darkness, hoping we would disappear. Instead, we learned to shine. And now that light reaches everywhere. Every station, every world, every heart brave enough to look up at the stars and wonder what lies beyond. The last of the flotilla crossed into the distance. vanishing into the great unknown. Our ancestors were exiled, Yuki concluded. Our children will explore new galaxies. That is the human story. Not one of conquering the universe, but of refusing to give up on it. Not one of dominance, but of determination. Not one of power, but of possibility. She raised her hand toward the sky, toward the future that waited among the stars. 300 years ago, they tried to end us. Today, we're just getting started. The celebration continued long into the night. On Earth and across the galaxy, beings of every kind raised their voices in joy. Some sang songs in languages older than the Council. Others danced to music that had never existed before. All of them looked toward tomorrow with hope, because that was the greatest lesson humanity had taught the galaxy. Not how to build weapons or conquer enemies. Not how to survive hardship or overcome adversity, but how to hope. How to grow. How to look at an empty void and see not nothing. Possibility. The Galactic Council had ruled through fear for 1,000,000 years. The Terran ascendancy would lead through hope for 1,000,000 more. And somewhere in the cosmos, the first human ship crossed into a new galaxy, carrying with it the dreams of everyone who had ever looked at the stars and wondered what might be waiting there. The answer, it turned out, was everything.